Okay, so my name is David Imprimo. I'm an education and documentation specialist here at iClass Pro. First of all, I'd like to thank everyone for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today. I'd also like to thank the members of our marketing and support teams who are helping out today in chat and who are available to answer any questions that you may have. Today's Let's Talk Pro is a refresher course on how iClass Pro's camp feature works and how you can use it to create limited time or one-off events for your customers. I've looked over the registrations and I've tried to answer as many questions as possible during the presentation itself. However, if there's something I miss or if you have a follow-up question, please feel free to ask it in chat and our team members will be happy to help you get the answers you need. I also wanted to mention that a lot of what we're going to cover today can also be found in our knowledge base and in the Getting Started with Camps guide that's available from the Education Corner. Let me show you where that is real quick. You can access the Education Corner from the Welcome page in the Office portal just by clicking on Education Corner. When you do that, that's going to take you to a new window with a lot of helpful information, such as recordings of our previous webinars, downloadable guides about different iClass Pro topics, copies of our newsletters, and links to release notes for new features and updates. A little off topic, I just wanted to point out real quick that in the release notes section, you'll find a link to our marketing hub, which has printable materials and videos about iClass Pro that you can download, brand, and share with your customers. So getting back to the topic at hand, the camps guide can be found in the helpful guides area. So you'll find the Getting Started with Camps guide there. Um, I will note that we're preparing some updates to that guide to incorporate the ability to define levels, which we're going to talk about today. So you won't see that information in the guide if you download it today, but the rest of the information in there is definitely helpful and still applies. All right, so there's a lot of information to cover. Let's get straight into it. Okay, so the first step in creating any event in iClass Pro is to determine the best event type to use. iClass Pro generally supports two types of events, ongoing and limited. For the most part, an ongoing event would be something that repeats on a regular basis where all students enrolled are expected to attend. A limited event lasts for a shorter duration and enrollments are more flexible. Students could attend all the meetings, or you may allow them to choose to enroll only for specific days. If you're on the iClass Pro Signature plan, we generally recommend setting up limited events as camps. However, if you're using our Elite or Premium plans, you have a choice on whether to make these events camps or appointments. How you choose to set up your specific event will depend on your intended audience, as well as which iClass Pro features will be most beneficial to you. For example, you might ask yourself, is this going to be a group event, such as a parents' night out, a sport event, or maybe a dance camp? If so, setting the event up as a camp would probably be best. Are you using the event for one-off or recurring private or semi-private training, such as swim, dance, or gymnastics training? Or maybe you're using it to evaluate skills to help you place students in the appropriate class or on a team. In that case, you might consider setting it up as an appointment instead. One feature of camps that's not available for appointments is the ability to set up what we call user-defined questions. These allow you to set up questions that parents will be able to answer during the registration process. If this functionality is required for you, then you need to set up the event as a camp. Also, note that currently appointment bookings don't trigger the system to charge anniversary fees. So if you need the system to check to see whether students are eligible for an anniversary fee during the registration process, you'll need to set up the event as a camp instead. For the purposes of today's training, we're going to assume that you've chosen to configure your event as a camp. Before we go any further, I'm going to pause briefly here just to clarify some terminology. First, since we're going to be using iClass Pro's Camps feature to create these events, I'm going to refer to them as camps throughout the presentation. However, you will be able to use iClass Pro's Camp Types option to essentially change the name that your customers see in the customer portal and mobile app instead of the word camp. We'll discuss how to do this a little bit later in the process. Secondly, I'm going to be discussing how to create and modify camp enrollments in both the office portal and the customer portal. Any instructions that I give you that apply to the customer portal also apply to how your customers will create and modify camp enrollments within the mobile or branded apps. And finally, if I speak of defining a dollar amount, you can interpret this as whichever currency you happen to use. In most cases, I'm simply using this term to refer to specifying an exact amount rather than a percentage. Okay, with all that said, let's get into how camps are created. I'm going to swap back over here to the Office portal. Now, before we can create our camp, let's begin by ensuring that we have all of the elements in place that we're going to need to define during the setup. We'll do this in a few different areas of the settings menu. So I'm going to go over here to the user menu, go to settings, and then we'll go first of all to setup and general settings. So first of all, we'll look at zones. If your facility uses zones to associate an event with a specific area within your facility, you'll want to check to ensure that that zone exists so you can assign it during the camp setup process. Because you can set a limit for simultaneous uses for each zone, the system will also let you know if you're creating an event that will overbook the area. For today's purposes, I'm going to use the red station, and that already exists. You'll also want to look at your programs. The program is used to track income and to also share skill trees between camps that are assigned to the same program, although you can override that on a per camp basis. If you use different email versions, the program can also be used to specify which camp enrollment email the customer is going to receive if they register for the camp. For today's purposes, I'm going to use the recreational gymnastics program, which also already exists. Create a charge category. Currently, the customer portal only supports a single charge category for all camp enrollments, so this needs to be pretty generic. For today's purposes, I'm going to use the limited event charge category, which I've already created. If you haven't set up camps before, or you need to make any changes to your communications, you should go ahead and customize your automated communication templates. Let's take a look at those and see which ones are related to camps and how they're used. So I'm going to open up the communication templates, and the communication templates consists of 4 tabs: iClass Pro, Customer Portal, Autopilot, and Custom. Right now, we're just going to concern ourselves with the iClass Pro and Customer Portal tabs. So the iClass Pro tab, these communications are triggered when a staff member performs in a specific event within the Office portal. So the communications here that will be related to camps are camp canceled, the camp enrollment request approved. This one's sent to customers if a staff member approves their enrollment request. The camp enrollment request denied, which is sent to the customer if a staff member denies their enrollment request. And then the new camp enrollment email, that's sent to customers if their enrollment was created by a staff member within the Office portal. Going back up here to the top, we have the Customer Portal tab. These are all triggered if a parent or a visitor triggers an event from the Customer Portal or mobile app. So we have the camp enrollment approved email, which is sent to the customer if their enrollment was automatically approved during the booking process. We have the camp enrollment request, which is sent to the customer if their enrollment was submitted as a request, and then they will receive a further camp enrollment approved or denied email once a staff member works through that. And then the notification of the camp enrollment. When we go through the customer portal settings related to camps here shortly, there is an option to send an email to the location where the camp is going to be held. If you enable that option, the system will use this email template to send that email to you. Now, you can create, as I mentioned earlier, you can create a distinct email variation for each program. And you would do that by clicking on the pencil here to edit the template. And you'll see here that there is a customize per program option. So you could choose specific programs, have very different versions of that, and depending on which program the camp is associated with, that's the version of the template that's going to be sent. So while you can create those, with the exception of the enrollment specific information populated by the email variables, you need to keep these pretty generalized as they'll be used for all of the camp enrollments associated with those programs. If needed, you can create a custom communication template, and you would do that here on the custom tab for each camp that provides more information that may be specific to that camp. And then you can filter by the camp name or a keyword on the families, students, camps, or enrollment page, and then select that custom communication template to send an email blast. This is also a good method for sending a reminder to students a few days prior to the camp start date. While you can't currently trigger these emails via autopilot, you can schedule them using the schedule email to be sent at a later date and time functionality if you're sending that email blast from the families or students page. I'll also note that if you choose to manually send the communications from either the family, students, or enrollments page, you'll also have the option to send SMS or push notifications using a custom template. These communication options are not available directly from the camps page. Okay, so getting back into our general settings here, after the communication templates, we have the levels. So if your facility uses levels to designate a specific skill aptitude expected to be attained by students enrolled in the camp, you'll want to check that that level exists so it can be assigned during the camp setup process. Note that this is new functionality. Previously, levels were only available for classes. We've just released this in the last month or so. Allowing you to assign levels to camps will also help your customers more easily locate the camps that are most suitable for their students. And they can also help you by utilizing the auto approval prerequisites to limit auto approved enrollments in camps so only students who have passed a specific skill level are automatically approved. We'll discuss the auto approval functionality a little later in the camp setup process. All right, moving out of the general settings, we're going to skip over class settings and go here to camp settings. So first of all, we have the option to create camp types. We mentioned this a little earlier. This is where you can create a specific event name that your customers are going to see instead of the word camp. So I'm going to go ahead and create a new camp type. The camp I'm going to create is a gymnastics clinic. So I want to create a camp type called gymnastics clinics. So the singular and the plural forms of the names are intended to display based on whether you have one or more actively active camps of that type. Um, Actively active, currently active. However, there is certainly no harm in entering the same value for both fields as I'm doing here. After I enter that, I just click create, and now that camp type exists. After saving the camp type, you can attach an image that will be displayed on the customer portal's booking page to direct customers to camps assigned to that type. So I'm going to do that real quick here. I'm going to go ahead and upload an image. And now I'm going to save and close. So when I go a little bit later to the customer portal to see this camp, I'm going to see that image reflected as the camp type. Okay, and lastly, there is the pricing schedule. So the pricing schedule tells iClass Pro how much you want to charge for enrollments in that camp. So let's go ahead and let's create a new pricing schedule here, and we'll walk through it real quick. So I am going to call this pricing schedule Gymnastics Clinic because I want to use it for all my gymnastics clinics. All right, let's briefly talk here about how the count students and attendees setting works. You can count students one at a time or by total. What this does is tell the system if you offer a multi-student discount for students in the same family who are enrolling in the same camp, whether you want to charge all of the students based on student one, student two, or you want to charge based on the total number of students in the family who are enrolling. In that case, We'll go over this more in a second, but basically student one gets charged the amount down column one. Student two gets the price down column two, three, four, etc. Now, if you charge by total, or if you count students by total, if there are two students in the family, they're both going to get charged the price in column two. If you count one at a time, student one gets charged column one, student two gets charged column two. So that's how that works. We also have the deposits table here. If you only require the customer to pay a deposit upon registration for the camp, here is where you're going to specify the amount of the deposit, either as a whole dollar amount or as a percentage. If you charge a percentage, make sure that you put that percentage sign after the percentage amount. If you don't, the system will interpret it as a whole number and it's going to give them a discount equal to that amount in whole dollars. Also note that requiring a deposit upon enrolling still creates a charge for the full tuition amount, but it only requires the payment for the deposit amount that you specify here. You'll still need to collect payment for the remainder of the charge prior to the start date of the camp. This is not an automated task, so you may need to mark it on your calendar unless you tend to go in and do this on a regular basis. Okay, so now we get down to the actual pricing. So there's a couple of different ways you can charge for camps. You can have flat rate, which basically charges the students a flat fee for their enrollment in the camp. Or you can have per block pricing, which charges students a specific fee based on the total number of camp blocks in which they're enrolled. Now, a camp block is basically it is one time the camp meets. So if your schedule is set up one per day, you would have one camp block for each day. If you have multiple times per day, you would have multiple blocks per day. So I can actually use the same pricing schedule for both types of pricing. Let me show you how that works. So I'm creating this pricing schedule. We've called it Gymnastics Clinic. I'm going to count students one at a time because I want to give students for discounts for multiple students in the same family, but I want the first student to always pay full price. I'm not going to charge a deposit. I am going to have parents pay up front for the entire camp. So I can actually go ahead and delete column 3 because I want that discount to apply to any additional students in the family. So my signal student here, I want to charge $25 for their first block. Second student's going to get a 15% discount. So that's going to be $21.25. So since I'm not going to allow parents to choose specific camp days, if I wanted to, I could go ahead and I could have put in the full price that I want to charge for the entire camp here instead and deleted all the additional rows. However, I want to be able to use this pricing schedule for other camps that might allow parents to choose days, and then only charge based on the number of camp blocks the students enrolled in. So since most of my camps run Monday through Friday, I'm going to start by using the add multiple rows option here to add 2 additional rows. So I have 3 rows. I'm going to start with row number 4. The step interval is how much is added to the previous number to get to your next interval. So I'm going to do 1, maximum row number is 5. When I click OK, it has created those additional rows. Now I'm going to set up the pricing by putting in the total amount I want to charge for 2 blocks in row 2. So that's 50 for student 1 and 42.50 for student 2. 75 in row 3, 63.75, and so on. Now, when I get to row 5, this is the total price that it's going to charge for the entire week of camp. And since I'm not allowing parents to choose dates, that will be the price that I expected to charge for the entire week. If I wanted to give the students another discount for booking for the entire week, I could do that just by changing the amount that I enter here. So if I put in 110 instead of 125, it's only going to charge 110. Now, if I wanted to basically give them the 5th block for free, I could actually just delete row 5 altogether and the system would stop charging after 4 days. If I wanted to give special discounts, I could add these on the special discounts tab. And then this discount would be applied to any students who register who are attached to families that have that special discount enabled. For today's purposes, I'm not going to do that. So I have my name. I'm counting students by one at a time. I'm not charging a deposit. I have all of my pricing in place. So I'm going to go ahead and click create to save the pricing schedule. Now that we have looked over all of our prerequisites, we're ready to actually create a camp. So I'm going to start by going to the camps tab. And I already have one camp that exists, but we're going to create a new one. I will note that I have a multi-location account. So I want to first of all make sure that I have this toggle set to the correct location where this camp is going to be held. If you have a single location account, you're not going to see that toggle. There's nothing wrong with your system. All right, so to create a new camp, I'm just going to click the new camp button and I'm going to fill in the following details. So we have a camp name here. This is going to be an intermediate gymnastics clinic. All new camps that you create are automatically set to active by default. I'm going to choose the camp program. So this is going to be recreational gymnastics. The camp level here will be intermediate. The camp zone, I mentioned earlier, I'm going to set it at the red station. And the camp type will be a gymnastics clinic. Now I set my requirements. So I have an age range here of 5 to 18 years, maximum of 40 entries, and this will be a co-ed camp. I personally am going to leave the grade blank. That's my general recommendation because the system, if you've configured your grade feature, will calculate their grade accordingly. Choosing a grade here locks it to that grade completely. It overrides any age requirements because if they're not in that grade, they won't be automatically approved. Okay, so now I choose my payment settings. So the pricing schedule will be the gymnastics clinic since we just created that. For amount due at sign up, I have the following options. We have deposit due only. We mentioned this one already. We have forced pay in full, which is what I'm going to choose because I want parents to pay upon enrollment. And then we have no payment required. If you choose no payment required, the system will not require them to make a payment when they register and you'll have to collect that fee later. So I'm going to go ahead and choose forced pay in full. The camp tax rate, it's going to use any tax rate that's associated with the camp program unless I tell it otherwise. I don't want to charge tax for my camp, so just to be on the safe side, I'm going to go ahead and toggle this tax exempt option just because I can't recall off the top of my head if there's a tax rate associated with the recreation gymnastics program or not. So then we have our camp dates. These are the dates that the camp will actually take place. So my camp is going to take place between June 3rd and June 7th. The allowed registration dates tell the system when to display the camp on the customer portal or mobile app, assuming that you enable that option on the next screen we're going to talk about. So I want mine to start showing today. So I'm going to go ahead and leave this set to the 11th, but I want it to stop showing the Friday before camp begins. So I'm going to cut that off because I want to have a head count before I go shopping for any supplies that I'm going to need for that camp. Also important that if you do set the start date to the future, just know that if you go to the customer portal, it's not going to show up there until that date arrives. You can still see it in the office portal. All right, so we're going to scroll back up here to the top and we're going to go to the customer portal tab. Show on web and allow web registration. These are pretty self-explanatory. And if you've ever set up a class, you're familiar with these. Allow parents to choose days. This option has to be enabled if you want to allow parents to enroll for only certain camp blocks or allow them to modify their enrollments. However, since this is just I want them to attend the entire camp, I'm going to leave it disabled. If you want your customers to pay when they enroll, auto approve requests must be enabled. And that is because if the enrollment is not automatically approved, the system will not create a charge because it doesn't know if your staff members are going to approve that enrollment or not. We have an option here to display a schedule alias and place of schedule details. What is a schedule alias? Aliases can be used to group individual camp blocks together. When a customer selects that alias, they'll be registered for all the camp blocks that are associated with that same alias. A common example here might be a half day camp with morning and afternoon options. You could set up the morning and afternoon blocks for each day and then group them together using an alias so students can be enrolled in all morning blocks, all afternoon blocks, or both. Note that if you were to carry out the scenario I just mentioned, your pricing schedule would need to be set up to account for up to 10 blocks because you'll have a morning and afternoon block for each day. Okay, camp picture that can be added after you've saved the camp. You can go back and add a picture. You can enter your camp description here. But let's go ahead and scroll back up to the top and we're going to take a look here at the user defined tab. This is where, as we mentioned, you could set up questions that parents are going to be asked to answer during the registration process. These questions can be configured as optional or required, and you can choose to allow them to either enter their own text or choose a yes or no response. You can also choose to associate a price with the question so that if the parent answers yes, the system will add an additional fee. This can be helpful in situations where maybe you're charging extra if you're going to provide lunch, or maybe you are offering an add-on such as a camp t-shirt. So your question might read, would you like a camp t-shirt? One size fits all. And then you can require a yes or no response and associate, $10 or however much you're going to charge for that t-shirt with it. I'm going to go ahead and move on to schedule now. So I'm going to set this schedule up. There's two types. There is weekly and daily. Weekly basically associates a day of the week, a specific start time, and a duration. And it will automatically create blocks for those depending on the camp dates that you define. So it will automatically find the Monday and create a block or whatever days you choose. Daily schedule allows you to choose specific dates. This is helpful primarily if you're going to run camp during a week where maybe there's a holiday and the camp's not going to meet on one particular day. You might choose a daily schedule. And if you do that, you choose specific dates, associate them with a start time and a duration. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and set this up as weekly. And I want my camp to run Monday through Friday. And it's going to start from 9 a.m. and it's going to end at 3. So I'm going to make it run for 6 hours every day. And then I'm going to do the same thing here for Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Okay, so note that right now, this is all we see is the day, start, and duration. If you allowed parents to choose individual days, you would also have an option here to adjust the max number of students on a per day basis. This does not appear if you use camp aliases or if you allow parents to choose days is disabled. And that's because you can't adjust students if they're enrolled for all the blocks because you're going to have the same number of students every day. Let me just show you what that looks like. I'm going to come back over here to customer portal and just to show you what it looks like, I will allow parents to choose days. I come back to my schedule now, you see max students. And so I could, if I needed to, come back in here and I could say, well, maybe on Monday, my max number of students is 35 because I have an instructor that's going to be out that day. And I could edit and then save if I needed to. I'm not going to do that though. So I'm going to go back here. I've unchecked that. I'm coming back to the schedule. Lastly here, the instructors. And I want to choose instructors who are going to be involved with these camps, who will be in charge of running them. So I select those. And if I needed to, I could go ahead and add keywords. These are the last things that I can add before I have to save the camp before moving on. So technically, I could have saved the camp at the schedules part if I was going to wait and assign instructors later. Maybe after I saw how many students enroll, I could sort of determine how many instructors I need. But I'm going to go ahead here and save the camp. Okay, it's warning me that Granville here has a schedule conflict because he is actually teaching something else at that time. This gives me a choice as a staff member to cancel and choose a different instructor, or I can go ahead and override the conflicts and save. I'm going to override and save. You'll see that in the background here, I now have two camps. And now that I have saved the camp, it keeps it open so I can come back and add additional items if I need to. I can attach promo codes. It will inherit any promo codes that are already assigned to the program, but I could assign promo codes here on an individual basis as well if I needed to, if they only apply to this camp. I can override the skill tree. As I mentioned earlier, it will inherit the skill tree from the program as well. But if I needed to override, since this is a gymnastics clinic, I have gymnastics and tumbling together here. This is intermediate, so maybe I just only need to assign the level 2 to this particular camp. I could do that here. And then we'll take a look here at the auto approval. So we mentioned these earlier. You can use auto approval prerequisites. The intended purpose of those is to allow the system to automatically approve enrollments in specific scenarios. Even if you disabled auto approve requests here on the customer portal tab, you could have it still auto approve in specific circumstances. So if you enable the use auto approve prerequisites option, you get to set certain criteria for auto approving those enrollments above and beyond those that are specified on your details tab. So this could include only auto approving a specific subset of students based on their age requirements, or on maybe if the student has passed a specific skill level within a certain period of time. So we have these different options here. If we choose none, basically that tells it to go ahead and auto approve anyway, even if you disabled the auto approve option on the customer portal tab here, just based on the requirements that you've already put on your details tab for age and gender and maximum number of students. I can choose to specify by age. And if I do that, students meeting the age criteria that are defined here are going to be auto approved. Those that do not meet the criteria will be submitted as requests. So the minimum age must be within the age range established by your default class requirements. The maximum age must also be within that age range established by your maximum requirements. So to allow for, like, if a student is greater than X age or less than Y age, you can leave either one of these fields empty. So if the max age is set to 5 and you leave the minimum age blank, then that means students are only going to be auto approved if they're 5 years or younger. Uh, Likewise, if you set the minimum age as 5 and leave the max age empty, it means the student will be auto approved if they're 5 years of age or older. And if I had allowed students younger than 5 to register, those students would be submitted as a request. You also have the ability to limit by skill level. So students meeting the skill level criteria defined here would be auto approved. Those who don't will be submitted as requests. So if you enable the skill level option, you have the ability to say they must have passed this skill level within the past X number of months. So since this camp is for gymnastics level 2, I'm going to select that the students must have already passed gymnastics level 1. And I'm going to say that they must have passed that within the past 6 months. So if it was greater than 6 months ago, maybe I want to reevaluate them because apparently they haven't made any progress in 6 months. So just gives you a lot to think about here. Now, important to note that passed means that the toggle for level passed must have been toggled on. Just passing all of the skills attached to that level does not make it passed. So important to note there. There is also an option here for both. And if I choose both, then I can say that the student has to meet both the age criteria and the level criteria in order to pass. So I just want to base it on the skill level. So I'm going to leave that here. So I'm going to go ahead and save and close. My camp now exists. So this is ready for staff members to book students into from the office portal at this point. Now, while each individual camp has a customer portal tab, and we told it that we want it to show on the customer portal, I believe. Let me check. And if we did not, I want to. Okay, show on web, allow web registration. Important. If I had missed that, then in a moment when we go into the customer portal, that camp would not appear. Okay, having said that, with each individual camp having their own customer portal tab, those settings only apply to that particular camp. There are also some global customer portal settings that apply to all camps. So these can be configured here. I'm going to go to the user menu, go to settings, customer portal, and other settings. So there are a few in the general settings area. The first of which is show camps and allow visitors to register for them. Important to note, this is the only setting in the general settings area that I'm going to discuss that applies solely to camps. The other ones I mention here in a moment are going to apply to classes, camps, and appointments if you're using them. So you want to carefully consider how you want to configure them. So then we have the show class camp party appointment list if not logged in. Show class and camp levels. Show class camp appointment instructors. Show full class camp appointment descriptions if not logged in. Show the zone in the customer portal. Important to note that if you choose to show the zone in the customer portal, you can customize the name that is shown instead of the word zone. So if you're a swim school, maybe you want to use the word lane in there. If you're a dance academy, maybe you want to use studio. Whatever works best and what your customers are familiar with. Then we have the option down here to sort classes and camps. This allows you to choose how to sort the classes and camps, how they're displayed in the customer portal. So this can either be alphabetically by name or chronologically by day and time. If you choose to sort by day and time, the list is arranged Sunday through Saturday. Important to note, if multiple classes or camps have the same name, or if they're held at the same time, the system will secondarily sort those by the internal ID number, which generally aligns with when the event was created. Okay, so if you make any changes to this area, be sure to save your settings. And then we're going to move on to the camp registration settings area. So we have count camp requests against openings. This setting counts any requests that are submitted for active enrollments against the number of openings in the camp. This is in order to preserve the first come, first served method of registration. Once the requests are processed, either approved or denied by a staff member, any remaining spots will open back up for new registrants or requests. Allow visitors to request a camp that's full. If this option is enabled, then the customer portal will allow customers to submit a waitlist request for a camp if there are no more openings available for registration. Allow visitors to request a camp for a student that does not meet class camp requirements. This will permit students to submit a request to enroll in a camp even if they don't meet the specified age or gender requirements. That request would then have to be approved by a staff member. All right, the next few settings are all related to modifying existing camp enrollments. iClass Pro only allows a single enrollment in a camp. You may have run into this. A customer enrolls in a camp, they enroll for certain days, they want to go back later and add additional ones, and the system tells them, hey, you've already got an enrollment here, you can't do it. If a camp is set up to allow parents to choose specific blocks, this means that if they do want to go back later and add the camp blocks, they can't simply create a new enrollment. A staff member instead would either have to go back and edit the enrollment, or you can allow customers to modify their enrollment themselves. So these following settings all apply to how to enable this option and then define how the system would charge for those modifications. So first of all, allow visitors to modify camp schedule. That is the main setting that would allow them to go back and edit their existing enrollment to add extra blocks. This is only applicable, first of all, for enrollments in camps where allow parents to choose days is enabled. Otherwise, it's assumed they're already enrolled for the full camp. This option will use the require payment when modifying camp setting, which is a little bit further down here. And then the subsequent method chosen under when charging for modified schedules to determine when that customer will be charged for the additional blocks. Okay, so when charging for modified schedules, you have the option to charge the difference or charge the remainder owed. That's what we're talking about here. Charging the difference is going to bill an amount based on the difference in what they were previously charged for the camp versus what the new total amount would be based on the number of blocks that they choose. So this means that if you require payment upon registration, the customer will only be required to pay for any new camp blocks, even if they still owe for previously created charges for that particular enrollment. If you choose charge the remainder owed, then the system is going to bill an amount based on the difference between the amount that's already been billed to the customer, the new price of the number of blocks selected in the pricing schedule, plus anything that's still outstanding for that particular camp enrollment. So if forced pay in full is enabled as your amount due at sign up in the camp details, the system will require immediate payment for any camp modifications. Charge nothing if a deposit due only is required when modifying a schedule. This option should be enabled if you don't want the customer to pay for the full camp price after the initial sign up if they come back and modify the schedule. Specifically, if it deposits all the customer portal is set to bill for a new enrollment in that camp, then you don't want to charge them anything extra if they come back and modify that before the charge is actually due. Okay, so important to note that the behavior of how promo codes and special discounts are applied toward camp enrollment modifications depends on how that when charging for a modified schedule setting is configured. Uh, if you have charged the difference there, discounts are applied to the modifications only, regardless of whether it was already applied to the original charge or not. And charge the remainder owed applies the discounts to the complete charge, regardless of whether it was already applied to the original charge. So if applying the discount would result in a negative value, the total cost for the modification would be capped at 0. So that's a lot of information, but important to know what those settings will do for your customers if they come back and modify their enrollment. All right, so let's continue on. We just have a few more settings here. So we have the anniversary fee. If this is enabled, the system's going to bill an anniversary fee to the customer if they are due based on your settings. The auto-approved charge category, as I mentioned earlier, you can only set one charge category for camp enrollments, and that will apply to all enrollments in the camp or all the camps. Set the due date for auto-created charges to the start date of camp. If this is enabled, when the charge is created, the due date will be set as the start date of camp. This is recommended if you only charge the deposit upon enrollment. Since deposits still create the charge for the full tuition amount, this would automatically set the rest of that charge to be due on the camp start date. Alternatively, you could set a date X number of days in the future from the current date as the due date for charges. This field is hidden. If you do enable the set due date, you're not able to do that as well. Important to note there. Also note that both of these settings really only apply if you're not forcing the families to pay in full, because if you force them to pay in full, the due date's really a moot point. Send email notification upon auto enrollment. This is the template that we mentioned earlier, that if this is enabled, you'll get an email notification if an enrollment is automatically approved. Restrict enrollment start date based on camp start time. If this is enabled, you're able to choose between two options and specify the number of minutes before or after a camp block start time that customers are allowed to register for a camp that's in progress. Note that you can only enable one of these at a time. Okay, so if you make any changes to these settings, go ahead and click Save. And now we're going to show you real quick about creating a camp enrollment from the customer portal. So I'm going to go over here to my customer portal tab. Let me refresh, make sure I'm still logged in. And I am not, so let me do that here real quick. And this is what your customers are going to experience if they want to enroll their student in a particular camp. So I am logged in. I am going to go ahead and choose to book now. I want to book into a gymnastics clinic, and you can see my camp type icon there. And I want to enroll Nadine. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to choose to see gymnastics clinics. And from here, I can see any of the clinics that are available. So I'm going to go ahead and choose that. I'm looking at the camp details. I'm going to choose to enroll now. And from here, you'll note that because I'm not allowing parents to choose specific camp days, I don't get to see the individual camp blocks. All I see is that I'm going to enroll this student. So I'm going to choose to add this to the cart. From here, I can see that, this is being submitted as a request because apparently Nadine does not meet the requirements. Maybe she didn't pass that skill level. So it is not going to charge anything up front. As I mentioned, if it gets submitted as a request, we don't know if it's going to get approved or not. So in order to enroll in this camp, I'm going to go ahead and complete the transaction. It tells me, thank you for your purchase. If I go back to the office portal in the online activity, if I look at the pending requests, I can see here that we have a request to enroll Nadine. So as a staff member, I could choose to go ahead to approve the request and charge, which I'm going to go ahead and do. And then I would just create that tuition charge as I normally do. So this is a limited event. I'm going to go ahead and create and make payment. I'm going to pay in cash. As always, important to choose which charges you want that payment applied to, so it actually shows as applied. Process the payment, and then I am finished. So that is the process for taking a request and auto approving it. If she had met all the criteria, this would have already been taken care of in the customer portal, and all I would have seen is that a new enrollment was created. Okay, so going back here, into the customer portal, let's take a look again here real quick, and let's see what it takes to enroll a student in a camp where they can choose days. So I want to enroll Norm this time. And actually, I want to go back. I don't want to do gymnastics clinics. I actually want to enroll him in a spring break camp. So I'm going to choose Norm. I'm going to choose the camp. I'm going to choose to enroll now. But now, because I allow parents to choose days, Norm can say, okay, I only want to be here Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday. And then I can add that to the cart. I can see here it's charging him $60 because that particular pricing schedule is set to charge $20 per block. I'm going to go ahead and choose to pay with my credit card on file. Pay now. As long as that payment is successful, then that enrollment will be created. So here we go. I can see that if I come back into the customer portal and I go to the students and I look at Norm Clegg, I will be able to see that Norm is enrolled. Let's expand here. He is in the spring break camp. He is registered for 3 blocks. Now, let's say I need to modify that enrollment. Okay, so let's look at how that's done from both the customer portal and the staff member. So I am Norm's parents. I come back and I realize, hey, we're actually going to be there all week. I want to go ahead and enroll him for the full week. So I will come here to the customer portal. I'll come to the My Account page. And on Norm, I'm going to choose to look at his enrollments. When I do that, I can see all the classes he's enrolled in. I can also see the camp, and I can see the option to modify schedule because I've allowed them to do that. So I'm going to go ahead and choose to modify the enrollment. When I do that, I can see all the blocks that I'm already registered for. I can also see the blocks I'm not registered for. So I would just select the extra blocks, add to the cart. This time when I come back, it's $30. Now you might be thinking, hey, that should have been 40 because you're charging $20 a block. Well, this particular pricing schedule gives them a 10% discount for if they register for all 5 days. It would have been 90. They've already paid 60, so it's charging the $30 difference. In order to complete this, I'm just going to click Pay Now. Again, as long as the payment is successful, it's going to update his enrollment and add those blocks. So here we go. It's successful. I come back to the office portal. If I open up his enrollments again, now he's registered for 5 blocks. So that's how parents are going to do it. How would a staff member do that from the office portal? Let's say that it already exists. The parent's standing in front of me or calls me on the phone. So let's take a look here. Let's go to the Barkley family. And I have little Jimmy here who is enrolled in that same camp that Norm is. He's also enrolled for 3 blocks. So I want to go ahead as a staff member and modify this enrollment. So I'm going to click the pencil next to the enrollment. I can see everything he's registered for. However, when I first go to edit the enrollment, it's important to note that it only shows me the blocks that are selected. Here under camp blocks, I'm going to choose to show all blocks. And from now, I can choose additional blocks. Once I've added the blocks that he wants to add, I'll do save and charge. If I go in here this time to create the camp tuition charge, he gets the additional $30 just like Norm did because he's also already paid $60. I'll choose my charge category, create and make payment. Again, we're going to go ahead and pay in cash, this time 30. Select the charge, process payment. As long as that payment, well, in this case, doesn't matter if the payment's successful or not. As the staff member, I've already saved the change. So he is enrolled in those blocks. If the payment had failed, he just would not have paid for them. Okay, so we're going to look here very briefly about what happens if a student calls and says that they want to drop a camp enrollment. And I say drop in quotation marks if that didn't come across, because technically there isn't a drop function for camps. If a student decides they're not going to be able to attend camp, you can handle it in one of two ways, depending on whether they're actually going to attend any of the camp at all. If they're not going to attend any of the camp blocks, basically you just delete the enrollment, and then you'll need to edit the ledger to delete the camp charge and issue a refund. If they're going to attend some of the camp dates, you can modify the camp enrollment as we just demonstrated, but uncheck the days they won't attend instead of adding blocks. Then you'll go back into the family ledger and edit that original tuition charge and issue a partial refund to balance it out. Alternatively, after editing the enrollment, you could just delete that original tuition charge and then create a new one. And the system will automatically calculate how much they should be charged for the updated enrollment. Okay, so there are a number of camp reports, but we're getting close to the end of the hour. I will just show you, basically those are here on the reports page. We're under camps. These are where all your camp specific reports are. I will add that now that we have added the levels to camps, additionally, in the classes category, there is a program summary report and a level summary report that if you run those now will also reference camps because levels can be attached to camps. Since we've extended levels to apply to camps as well as classes, any reports that have historically had filter options for levels have been updated so that now they reference both types of events. Okay, as a general overview of how camps work in iClass Pro, I realize it was a little fast-paced, so I hope that after this demonstration, you feel a little more confident or a lot more confident in your understanding of how the setup works, how the pricing schedule is used to determine individual camp prices, and how the system will charge for modified enrollment. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen and we will take a quick look at the chats here, see if there is anything that I need to address before we move on. See if there's anything outstanding here. Okay, looks like Justin is on top of everything. Great job, Justin. Thank you. So I'm going to go ahead and call that for today. As always, thanks for taking time out of your day to spend with us. I encourage everyone to go into the Education Corner, download the Getting Started with Camps guide that's available there. And while you're there, spend a little extra time looking around the Education Corner. It's definitely worth it, and there's a lot of great information there. You'll also be receiving an email later that has a link to today's recording in case you joined us late. Or maybe you want to review it later at a more leisurely pace, maybe share it with a coworker. But thanks again for everyone. Have a great day.